health risk factors and behaviors. What is obesity and how is it measured? Obesity is first measured by the BMI, which is the person's weight in kilograms divided by his or her height in meters per square. The National Institute of Health now defines it as normal weight, overweight, and obesity according to the BMI rather than the traditional height and weight charts. Adolescent obesity is defined as a BMI that is above or at 95 percentile. Children and teens of the same sex have to be in this percentile range for it to work. Over the past several decades, childhood obesity has increased and tripled since 1980. However, there hasn't been a correlation between obesity and health risk factors and behaviors, how there has been a correlation between the complications of obesity. So today, again, we will focus on those two primary obesity factors. Causes of obesity. Television advertisements. Prior to Dr. Majah's 2011 study, no research had been performed on or with television food advertisements. These advertisements can influence the risk of obesity in children. These food advertisements comprise of large populations of television's accountings as far as food advertisements are comprised of 23 to 57% of all TV commercials, depending on the time of day and channel. In this study, we found that television advertisements can influence the obesity risk or influence the risk of obesity in children, especially in following external factors such as if there is a television in the child's room, if there is a bathroom in the child's room, if there is family educational background and household income that is sustainable for a healthy lifestyle. In this graph we see here, as we look at age versus 10 to 13 and how they looked at the education of the parents as well, and that percentage of those people that were receptive to those food advertisements. As you can see, it's about 47% for 10-year-old boys, and it just goes up from there. TV sessions are a wide range, most being 2 TV sessions that would take for them to be receptive for that particular food. The second cause of obesity could be the loss of control of eating, LOC. Basically what I mean by this is this refers to the perceived notion that someone is unable to experience or control what or how much they're eating, regardless of the reported amount of food consumed. However, by this definition, LOC encompasses both classic episodes of binge eating and subjugated binge eating. Dr. Cassidy did find that LOC was higher in African American children than it was in Caucasian Americans. However, both groups displayed a high percentages for LOC eating. In this graph, you will see the difference between African Americans and their LOC, Caucasian Americans and their LOC, African Americans and their non-LOC, and Caucasian Americans and their non-LOC. And at every time, the African American group had been higher. However, as far as consumption of energy or food is concerned, the consumption is high across the board. Our next cause of obesity can be concerned as binge eating. Binge eating can be defined as the consumption of objectively large amounts of food while experiencing a sense of loss of control of eating, and the most commonly reported and this is most commonly reported among obese children as far as the disorder of eating behavior. Oddly, binge eating is commonly associated with weight loss in adolescents. However, binge eating appears to promote more excessive weight and fat gain due to inconsistent eating habits. As we see in this figure, we looked at Hispanic, Caucasian, African American children, their age, their sex, their BMIs, waist circumference, body fat, and also their scores as far as the CHEAT. And if you can see below, CHEAT stands for Children Eating Attitude Test, and also their scores for the Children Depression Inventory, and their prevalence to binge eat off of that. African Americans do seem to be higher in this department as far as a whole. However, I'm sorry, Hispanic Americans seem to be higher than African Americans as a whole, with African Americans coming in second and Caucasian Americans coming in third. The overall prevalence of binge eating as far as the full syndrome, however, is low. Our second cause of obesity is school nutrition policies. These policies, with obesity being an epidemic, there's a national interest in this list at the state level and the federal level to try to find school policies that relate to nutrition and to physical activities. Policies adapted by the state and in relationship with the youth are usually done by state or local basis, so they can get the actual demographic and culture addressed that they need to in their society. In this figure, you'll actually see a scatter plot of the state level percentage of obese youth between the ages of 10 to 17 all over as far as food service and nutrition. If you'll notice, West Virginia seems to be the highest across the board as far as food service and nutrition policies, and also physical activity and education policies, with Utah and Wyoming being at the bottom end of the spectrum. If we try to look for Alabama, they're right in the middle as far as the obesity rate, which is interesting because the obesity rate is usually higher in the South than it is in the North, compared from Dr. Nann's 2010 test results. Our next cause of obesity is health risk factors. Now, this is a big session because risk factors have never been truly explored. Again, like I said, they have explored the correlation between what happens after someone is obese, but not what is causing that obese and those health risk factors and what they attribute. And when I mean about health risk factors, I mean the correlation between your body mass index and smoking, binge drinking, alcohol and tobacco use, drug use, fighting and aggression, and bullying. With that being said, it's been noticed that higher BMIs have been associated to be linked with substance abuse and substance use, and to the aggressive behaviors amongst different subjects. Behavioral risk factors, however, in adolescent and obesity is focused on inadequate diet, physical activity, and a sedentary lifestyle. And with this association, we look at the risk factors again, and it suggests that overweight/obese adolescents may need more or valuable health risk factors to be there more important, that they stay away from these hazardous risk factors due to the fact of their already predisposition to obesity. If we look at these hazardous risk factors, I did a standard deviation chart with age and year from 17 to 13, as also the hazardous ratios of how much of those hazardous materials they would use. If you notice, it's kind of a long deviation between each group, especially when you start jumping from 7 to 13. It's pretty consistent when you stay in between the 2 years, 7 to 8, 9 to 10, 11 to 12, 12 to 13. But as a far whole, it has definitely been a gap as far as what those hazard materials and how they affect the children at their hand. Obesity in youth has become a pandemic and an epidemic in this country. There's